So today I'm going to be showing you, it's off-putting. Hello, so today I'm going to be showing you how to make a copy of a really gorgeous 1930s embroidered wool bag, and I'll show you the bag. I know, nice, isn't it? Really really pretty and really easy to make. Not quick to make, but very easy, and it's something that you can do cuddled up on a sofa with the dogs watching old episodes of Poirot, for example. I found this at a vintage fair, and actually both my mother and I saw it at the same time, and we did a sprint worthy of Usain Bolt to get it, and arrived at much the same time, but I did let my mother buy it because I'm kind like that. But I'll just put it up to show you better. And it's lined in this slightly grubby O'Donnell silk. And then it's got these, oh, don't give me your grubby old ball. It's got these lovely bamboo handles. And the seller actually called this the happy bag. It just makes you happy to see it. And if you think of the 1930s, late 30s, early 40s, the magazines at that time are full of... Sorry, am I balancing that on your head? I know you're at that height, I do beg your pardon. So the magazines at that time were full of wonderful ideas for needlepoint and embroidery. And the wonderful thing about this bag, it's hard to... Is it going to stop? So the wonderful thing about this bag is that if you do, well, I love doing tapestries, and you're always left with little oddments of wool, and you can basically use these little oddments of wool to create this little simple daisy design. And the backing, show you, it's just on the one that the one I'm making over here. It's just a Hessian, like Hessian sacking backing, and it's really cheap to buy. Or I even found lots of these sacks being given away for free at the local gardening centre. So I picked up lots because they're great for my rag rugs as well. So I'll do another episode on those. So this is how far I've got. Now this did not take a week. I've been doing this for a long time, but I haven't been doing it all the time, obviously. I've just been doing it when I'm watching the telly or in family Zoom calls. All you need for this project is a strip of Hessian, tapestry wools like the ones left over from kits, and a pretty purse frame or bag handle like the vintage one that I have here, which is made of either celluloid or bakelite, I'm not sure which one. I've been doing this embroidery, this wool embroidery, for a while, so you can see that I've done quite a bit of it. But I'm marking the top, and I'll mark the base as well for my stitching line so that it will fit into the frame. And before I started embroidering my daisies, I also machine stitched around the edge of the Hessian, and it won't fray beyond the line of the machine stitching. And you can make your purse or bag obviously to the size you want, but just to let you know how big mine was, it was 10 inches tall, that's around 25.5 centimeters, and about 7.5 inches, that's 19 centimeters wide. And what you do is a lazy daisy stitch. So you start at the center and bringing your needle out from back to front and then looping the wool around. I then kind of hold it with my thumb, and then you bring the needle back through the centre again and out a short distance away to create that little petal shape with the loop. And then you secure the loop in place just by a little stitch right at the end, literally just over one thread of the Hessian, and then just finish off at the back of the work. And then you just carry on alternating thread colours. I began each time by making quite a large knot at the end of my piece of wool. It has to be quite large because the hessian obviously has quite kind of large holes to it. And in the centre of each daisy, you use a contrasting wool colour to make a French knot. And because the hessian is kind of drawn back by the daisy I've stitched to kind of create quite a large hole in the centre, I started in the centre by just putting in a couple of stitches to form a nice secure base for my French knot. And then to make a French knot, you bring the needle up from back to front, or in my case here, I can just bring it underneath the foundation stitch I created, and then wind the thread around the needle 3 times, hold it with your finger, pull the thread through to create a knot that will lie flat against the hessian to create a contrast centre for each daisy. And I did most of this embroidering squashed on the edge of the sofa while Raisin Rabbit stretched out across the rest of the sofa using my bag of wool as a pillow. That's Pixie confined to the floor, me perched on the edge of the corner while she objects to her pillow, my wool bag, being moved. And as you make your daisy, you stitch each petal to sort of intertwine with the petals that you've already sewn. So you're basically trying to have as little hessian showing through as possible. The prettiness of this design is actually very much around the daisies all blending together in all these gorgeous wool colours. And it's really easy. This is a design that you can do in front of the TV, and you'll even know exactly what's going on in the programme that you're watching, which can't be said of all sewing projects where I tend to miss a lot of what's going on. But with this embroidery, you can chat away on Zoom or Skype call, you can watch TV. It's so easy to do. You don't really have to think, which is always a good thing. And I love to have a project like this that you can sort of do any old time. And also, I don't know about you, but I find if my hands need to be busy, and if they're not busy sewing or embroidering, they're usually busy making cups of tea with a little something. So basically, if I'm not sewing, I tend to be nibbling. So yeah, so you make your daisy just by going round like this from the centre, creating each petal as you go. And it really is the most kind of economic of projects. Having seen the original Happy Bag, I realised I didn't need to stress about colours going together. Part of the joy of the Happy Bag is it's just a assortment of random gorgeous colours all together. And I think there's something that's quite muted about wool anyway. You know, even bright colours of wool have a muted quality to them. It's something about the texture of the wool. So this isn't a fast project, but it is a very easy one, and it's one of those ones that you probably, if you're like me, will kind of pick up and put down. And actually, as I did this project, I ran out of some of my wool colours and started using others. And I really don't think it mattered at all. It's a very forgiving project, and somehow it seems so characteristic of the 30s and 40s when, with the Great Depression and wartime rationing, there wasn't much around, and people became so inventive and ingenious about using all the bits and pieces they had around the home and in their sewing baskets. So this project is basically all round good news if you enjoy sewing. But if you're a dog and don't really enjoy watching your owner sew, it's a little boring, and at some stage an intervention has to be made. And here Pixie decided this was the moment her dog could take it no longer. And once my embroidery was complete, I decided to put in a drop-in lining, and you will need a lining for this embroidery because obviously the back is quite messy. So I cut my lining to the size of my wool embroidery, and I decided to do a drop-in lining. So I first stitched my embroidery piece together right side to right side, leaving a gap at the top obviously, and you can see the sides needed a few more flowers, which I just stitched into the top, and then I dropped in my lining, remembering to make sure that the wrong side of the lining faced the wrong side of the embroidery, so that when you look inside the bag you have the nice sides showing. And then I folded around the edges of the wool embroidery and the lining, turning them in towards each other, and then I really carefully stitched around the edge of the lining in the bag, and that's how it looks. And then because my vintage purse frame lacked a handle, I decided to make one from the wool. Now, this wasn't exactly the right moment to make the wool handle because it actually later got in the way while I was stitching my purse to the frame. But I just wanted to see if it would work, and I should have held back, but I didn't. So what I did was I took lots of the wools that I had left and I cut them to the same length, and then I tied a really tight double knot around the first ring of the purse frame, and then I just plaited them really tightly together all the way along. And when I reached the end of my long plait, I twist the wool threads so that I can maneuver them through the ring, trim my tassel, and then I knot it really tightly and securely around that ring, as you can see I'm doing there. And there is my little wool handle, and it does go rather nicely with the purse itself, I think. I mean, it's a bit DIY, but I think it'll be all right, and I can dangle it over my wrist, and just trimming those tassels to make them look a little bit neater. And now it's time to just stitch the purse into that frame. You can see why it might have been better to put that woolly handle on later. So I just stitch through the bag and through those holes. I'm photographing this as best that I can, but in reality I was like nose down in the purse, squinting at those holes, rather like a kind of horse with a nose bag. But just to show you those stitches and what they look like, I did a few through each hole because I want my purse to be really secure and hold some weight. So I just wanted to show you how well my new 1930s style embroidered wool bag just complements a vintage outfit. So I'm wearing my grey culottes that I made last week and my short sleeve jumper from Knitting for Victory, and a beret with the felt flowers that I made from the 1940s designs, and carrying, of course, my 1930s style happy bag. And before I go, I'll show you a couple of true vintage 30s bags that I have in this kind of shape and size. It's actually such a useful size. You can see, I'm just going to show you if I open it up. It's just a good size for popping in your mobile phone and then person keys, and you've just got exactly the kind of right size that you need. And you can also see it's just so pretty and colourful, this little bag, and because it's so multicoloured, it really will go with everything that I own. And just to show you a close-up of it, all those colourful wool embroidered daisies. And actually, when I saw the Happy Bag originally at the vintage fair, I hadn't ever seen anything like it before. So who knows where the design came from? I haven't seen it in any vintage needlecraft magazines, which doesn't mean it wasn't in one of them. Or it could be that some inventive lady of the 1930s just thought, what will I do with my old bits of wool? And invented the idea herself. We'll never know, but it's certainly an ingenious little design. So I hope you enjoyed seeing me make my Happy Bag. I just wanted to show you some genuine vintage equivalent. So you can see this shape. This shape was quite popular. I mean, to show you that a kind of size comparison, this one, the true vintage one, is a bit longer, but generally that sort of tall, tall, slim, rectangular shape is quite popular. And here's another genuine vintage one too. Actually, it's such a good size because you can fit your purse and your mobile phone and your keys in it for an evening out. Not that the dogs and I have many evenings out. Do we, dogs? No. But should we all go out, we've got our bag to go out with. You can find these little clasps on eBay and Etsy, or there's like modern ones you can buy too. Another little close up for you, and close up of the handle too. When I forgot to show you earlier, those gaps that were left in the stitching at the edges, I just stitched the daisies around those edges, so the bag is like completely daisy covered. So I hope you might be inspired to make your own Happy Bag, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week for more sewing adventures. See you next week. Bye. Perfect. Oopsie. Bye. Bye bye. See you next week. Bye from Pixie.